There were loud screams coming from your house. I had been away for a fortnight. Only my parents had copies of the keys. I did not shout or panic. Instead, I had installed hidden cameras. When I left next time, I reviewed the recordings and was completely stunned. Half an hour afterward, the authorities were called. What you must understand is that I secure my home as if I am expecting a break-in every single Tuesday. A deadbolt, a double-cylinder lock, a keypad lock, everything possible. This is not anxiety, but a matter of routine. I travel frequently for work. As a consultant, I handle a demanding and high-pressure job with numerous billable hours, spending most of my time managing other people's crises and the rest pretending it is perfectly fine to return to a silent house with last week's leftovers and an unopened electricity bill attached to the fridge with a magnet reading "Live, Laugh, Love" in faux cursive. I am fully aware of the irony. That Sunday, after 2 weeks in Denver with back-to-back client sessions, 3 days surviving on cold airport sandwiches, and a hotel room that undoubtedly had a bloodstain beneath the armchair, all I wanted was a long shower, a frozen burrito, and complete silence until Wednesday. Instead, I encountered Mark. Mark is my neighbor in his mid-40s, defiantly balding, wears socks paired with sandals, and treats lawn mowing like an Olympic sport. Oddly enough, he is unnervingly friendly, which raises its own suspicions. I had only stepped outside briefly to get groceries and barely locked the door behind me. He stood in his driveway squinting at me as if I were some alien who had landed off course. "Hey," he said. I nodded, replying with a simple, "Hey." Then he gave me a look that was a mixture of worry and preparation. "Is everything all right at your place?" I blinked in surprise. "Yeah, why?" He scratched the back of his neck. "We've, been hearing some noises from your house at night." "What kind of noises?" He hesitated before saying, "Screaming." I stared at him in disbelief. "Sorry, what?" His expression was very serious. "Screaming. A few nights ago and before that as well. It was loud enough that my wife thought someone was hurt. We even nearly called the police." I laughed because what else can you do when someone tells you they have heard screaming from your house? "That cannot be true," I said. "I've been out of town for 2 weeks. The house was empty." Mark just looked at me and then nodded slowly, as if he was humoring me. "If you say so." I shrugged. "I really do." "Right." He took a step back toward his garage and said, "Just keep it down next time, okay?" Then that was it. He turned and left me standing alone on the sidewalk, holding my keys and trying to wrap my head around the idea that apparently my house had been screaming while I was away. No big deal. I went back inside, locking the door behind me as if that would make a difference. The house was quiet, neat, maybe even too neat. I noticed this when I passed the hallway. The mirror was cleaner than I recalled, and the floor, my floor, had never been this shiny. I don't polish floors. I just Swiffer them like any normal adult who does not obsess over cleanliness. There was no chance for perfection. Then I went upstairs. That is when I saw it. My bed was made, not just casually pulled together, but prepared like in a hotel. The corners were neatly tucked, as tight as if following military standards. The pillows were fluffed, and the blanket was folded back at a flawless angle. It looked as if someone had binge-watched countless cleaning tutorials and decided to transform my bedroom into a showcase from a Pinterest board. At that moment, an uneasy feeling crept in. It was not exactly fear, but a quiet suspicion that something was not right. I already knew who had done it, so I called my mom, Susan. She answered on the second ring, sounding unusually cheerful, which raised my doubts even more. "Hi, sweetheart. How was your trip?" she asked. "Fine," I replied quickly. "I have a question. Were you at my place?" "Oh, I stopped by to water the plants." "By the way, you really should have given better directions for the orchids. I had to improvise." Then I asked her if she had made my bed. She laughed and said, "Well, someone had to." "You left it quite messy." I exhaled deeply and reminded her that I had told her before not to touch my things. Come on, I didn't move anything else, just made the bed. I also vacuumed, wiped down the counters, and even organized the spice drawer. You had 3 containers of paprika. Sarah. I closed my eyes and asked carefully, "You didn't bring anyone over, right?" "Of course not." "Why would I? That would be ridiculous." I chose not to argue, not because I trusted her, but because I was too tired to unravel a tangled story layered over rearranged bedding and cinnamon. After a few minutes of unwanted cleaning tips and one final reminder, she hung up. I realized I really should be dating more because time is not on my side and there's nothing wrong with engineers. Sitting on the edge of the immaculate bed, I stared at the spotless floor and felt my calm begin to unravel. Later that day, I went outside again. I did not want to, but I felt compelled. Mark was once more in his garage, shifting boxes as if he were constructing some kind of fortress. I approached cautiously, like someone trying not to alarm a nervous creature. "Hey," I said. He looked up. "Hi." Feeling nervous, I rubbed my hands together and asked, "Can I ask exactly what you heard from my house?" Mark paused before answering. I quickly added, "I am not blaming anyone. I just was not there, and I am trying to understand what happened." Mark glanced past me toward my house, then back at me. "There were people coming and going, different ones I did not recognize," he said. "When was this?" I inquired. "A few nights ago, around midnight. The night before as well," he replied. Swallowing, I thought of the screaming. He scratched his chin and explained, "It was not yelling or fighting. It sounded like someone was in pain. It was not normal or playful." I remained silent. Then he continued, "This is not the first time either." I did not mention it before, but something similar happened in March. Not as intense, but alike. There was a night around the 10th with loud noises and people coming and going, and again in early June. I recall because it was the night before my daughter's dance show. I nodded slowly, even though I felt far from steady. "Look," he said more gently now, I'm not trying to stir up trouble, but whatever is happening over there, it is definitely not nothing." I returned inside, secured the door once more, then took out my planner. On the 10th of March, I was in Atlanta. On the 2nd of June, I was in Denver. My mother had said she just watered the plants, nothing else. Yet there were people inside my house shouting while I was hundreds of miles away, believing the place was empty. I was not living alone. I was simply the only one paying rent. That night, I could not sleep. I did not double-check the locks or even brush my teeth. I just lay in bed, the very bed someone else had prepared for me, struggling to avoid picturing scenes I could never erase. The shouting, the strangers, the recurring pattern, March and June. Every time I went away, something strange occurred in my home. The worst part was that I truly had no clue what was going on. Strange people coming and going, loud music, screaming, my bed arranged incorrectly, the floors unbelievably clean. It felt as if someone had scrubbed away the surface of my life and painted something new beneath, something I was not meant to see. But I did notice, and now I could not unsee it. To understand how all this began, you have to know about my family. By family, I mostly mean my parents, my sister, and myself. One of these people was very different from the others. My parents were once genuine hippies, not the charming kind who make their own soap and shop at farmers markets, but the real deal. Drum circles, herbal tea, made from dubious plants, and group therapy sessions held in garages. My mother used to wear a boutique shawl and speak about shifts in energy before she became pregnant with me, and traded the shawl for a position at a shipping company, as well as a 2-bedroom house in the outskirts of the city. They never truly forgave me for that, by the way, for being the cause that made them take on responsibility. While growing up, fragments of their previous life always lingered around. Books about Tantra hidden beneath piles of unpaid water bills, incense burners placed beside the tax documents, a dream catcher hanging above the guest room bed that no one was ever allowed to enter. And of course, the philosophy they followed. They firmly believed in the concept of sharing, which seems positive until you realize what it meant in reality. I was born first, 2 years older than my sister, so naturally the larger room was mine. That was my initial error, because after my sister reached the age of 5 and decided to transform her bedroom into a dance studio, a phase that lasted about 3 weeks, my parents said I did not really need all that space since I was not utilizing it. Would it not be better, more equitable, if she could have access to both rooms? That soon became the norm. Share the books, share the toys, my bicycle. Well, she needed to learn how to ride, did she not? And if I refused to share, that just meant I was selfish, controlling, unspiritual, someone who had yet to unlearn capitalist attachment to possessions. Yes, that was an actual statement from my father, David, when I was 8 years old. The sharing was always one-sided. She never had to give anything back. Nothing belonged to me. Not my toys, not my privacy, not even my closet. I was the tough one, the giving one, the person who already had plenty. So I learned to abandon fairness, personal space, and the idea that anything would really be mine until I grew older and grew weary of it all. I worked through college, graduated ahead of schedule, secured an IT consulting job that paid well, but aged me by a decade in just 2 years. By the time I was 29, I had bought my own home. It was not a mansion, but it was solid. A 3-bedroom house with a modest yard and good natural light. A place that finally felt like breathing room after a lifetime of being pushed aside. My parents despised it. My mother once told me, "You don't even have a family," as if that was some kind of moral flaw. Why do you need all that space? I kept quiet. Meanwhile, my sister, Emily, already had 2 children, married to a man who wore cartoon socks and called everyone bro. They owned a smaller house in the neighboring town, a fixer-upper that was never actually fixed. Every time my parents visited them, they returned with new complaints. They said, "Your sister is overwhelmed with bills. The kids need room to play. It is unfair that you have all this. And she is struggling." At first, I helped as much as I could. I babysat, paid for a weekend getaway, once helped cover the cost of a broken washing machine, but it was never enough, because what they really wanted, as they eventually said outright, was for me to downsize, sell my house, move somewhere smaller, and give the difference to my sister. My father insisted it was better to leave it at home, asking why it would be wasted. I calmly refused without feeling guilty, which they did not appreciate. For a while, communication was minimal, limited to group chats or awkward family gatherings. Gradually, my mother began to soften. Unexpectedly, she called one day and said, "I have been thinking about your orchids. I would be happy to water them when you travel." That marked the beginning. At first, it was just taking care of the plants. Then she added, "I saw the rug look dusty, so I vacuumed it. I hope that is all right." After that, she suggested, "You really should organize your entryway." I tidied it a little when I was there. Later, she corrected how I made my bed, saying, "Your top sheet is folded incorrectly. You are not at a hotel." Things grew stranger. I once returned home to find the spices arranged alphabetically, but in Latin, not English. Another time, the kitchen table was cleaned and set with placemats I had never seen before. I gently asked her to stop. She explained it was her new pastime. "I have been watching cleaning tutorials," she mentioned. That was how she justified why my laundry was folded into swan shapes and my socks were sorted by energy centers. I did not insist on ending it because, and I dislike admitting this, part of me felt relieved that she talked to me again. At least I was not completely cut off for refusing to ruin myself financially to ensure sibling fairness. Yet the timing was suspicious to me. Her cleaning obsession began just as my sister moved into a larger home with a backyard and a spacious walk-in closet. A mortgage she clearly could not manage on her own. I recall once asking casually how they pulled it off. My sister just smiled and said we had assistance. From whom? She did not reveal. And I did not press further because a part of me already sensed that if I dug too deep, I would uncover something decayed beneath the surface, something impossible to ignore. I just had no idea how severe it was at the time. Not then. Not yet. I did not want to become the sort of person who installs hidden cameras inside her own home. I wished to be ordinary, uneventful, even the kind of woman who says, "Thanks, Mom," when her mother offers to water the plants without wondering if it meant anything more. The woman who locks her door and trusts the bed will still be made when she returns. However, after what Mark shared with me, the screaming, the strangers, the way he looked at me like I was being dishonest when I said the house was empty, I could no longer be that woman. So, I made up my mind. My next work trip was already arranged. 3 days in Boise for a full rollout meeting with an overseas team. I would be away. The house would be unattended, and my mother, who was familiar with my schedule, would certainly find a reason to come by. Before leaving, I set up 5 cameras: living room, kitchen, hallway, entryway, bedroom. Each one was small, cloud-connected, audio-enabled, hidden discreetly on bookshelves, above cabinets, or behind plants. Completely legal and absolutely necessary. I had no idea what I was about to discover, but I was certain I would stop guessing. The evening before my trip, I sent a message to my mom. I wrote, "Hey, heading to Boise tomorrow. If you could water the plants, I would appreciate it. But please do nothing else while I am away. No tidying, no rearranging, just the plants." She responded, I will try not to clean. You know how I am. Safe travels." Such a message would seem harmless from anyone else, but coming from her, it felt like a setup. On the first night, there was nothing unusual. She arrived around midday, watered the plants, shifted a framed picture, and wiped something on the counter that did not need cleaning. Irritating, familiar, no shouting, no visitors, just the typical motherly chaos disguised as assistance. I observed everything that evening from my hotel room, laptop open, headphones on, anxiety lodged deep in my throat like a marble stuck inside. It was quiet, though I could not relax. The next night, I checked the security feed at about 8 o'clock in the evening. Initially, the scene was still, dimly lit, no signs of movement. Then the front door opened and someone entered. It was not my mother. Broad-shouldered, carrying a duffel bag over one arm, he walked confidently through the living room as if familiar with the path, without hesitation or pause. 2 minutes later, another person came in, followed by a woman with a long silver braid holding a bottle of wine. Then a woman wearing boots and a red shawl arrived, and a man carrying a folding chair joined as well. No one knocked or spoke loudly. They all moved as though they belonged there. I stared at the screen without blinking. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. "Hey, where are you? Our call with the team from India started a few minutes ago." I had completely forgotten because of the time difference. It was morning for them, just another typical Tuesday. For me, it marked the start of something indescribable. I closed the video feed, grabbed my work laptop, and joined the Zoom meeting. I cannot claim to recall what the discussion was about. Picture this: strangers stepping into your home. Not neighbors, not friends. Strangers carrying bags, wine, and folding chairs. Then imagine shifting windows and pretending to focus on enterprise data synchronization while someone named Richishi walks you through slides that make no sense to you on a regular day. I nodded, smiled, and probably agreed to things I would regret later. Inside, I was falling apart. On the outside, I was muted and composed. The meeting dragged for about 30 minutes, yet it felt like 10 hours. Once it finished, I reopened the camera feed. I wish I had not. The living room was packed. People were sprawled over the furniture as if it belonged to them. The lights were dimmed, music softly pulsing in the background, creating a gentle rhythm. Laughter filled the space. Someone lit a candle. I spotted a man in nothing but boxer shorts lounging on my sofa. A woman sat cross-legged on the rug, opening a small black case. A handful of unmistakably adult items were spread out on my coffee table. There was something made of leather, something shiny, and something that moved. Someone else walked barefoot down the hallway, clutching what appeared to be a blindfold. She laughed softly as she passed the bookshelf. that very bookshelf where I had hidden the camera. She glanced directly near it, not through it, just close by. Still, a shiver ran through me. This is my home. This is my couch. This is my table. I have lunch there. I place my coffee mugs there. And now, this. I snapped the laptop shut quickly as if it were scorching, as if it might burn me. I was still gazing at the ceiling when my phone rang again. An unknown number appeared. I answered without hesitation. "Hello, is this Sarah Kessler?" The voice asked. "Yes, speaking," I replied. "This is Officer Miller from the Maple Glen Police Department. We're following up on a report of a gathering at your residence tonight. Are you aware of anyone currently using the property?" I swallowed hard. "No, I am in Boise. I am not home. Several people on site have expressed concern after finding surveillance devices inside the house. Some didn't know they were being recorded. Your parents are there right now and claim they had permission to use the space." "They didn't," I said firmly. "You are listed as the homeowner, correct?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Can you verify if anyone was allowed to hold an event at the home?" "No," I said. "I told my mother she could water the plants. I sent her a message. That was all." "Do you still have that message?" "Yes, I can forward it." "All right." "You might be contacted for a formal statement. At this moment, you are not facing any legal issues, but be advised there could be zoning or licensing matters under investigation." "All right, we decided to follow up." He ended the call. I stayed silent, just sitting there and staring at the screen, trying to absorb the reality that I hadn't imagined any of this. I kept trying to erase from my mind everything I had witnessed, fully aware I never would be able to forget it. About 15 minutes after the police call finished, my phone rang once more. This time, it was my mother. At first, I almost didn't answer, hesitating as if the screen could somehow harm me. But curiosity won over fear because I still hadn't heard her voice since I saw people undressing in my living room and spreading out bondage gear on the coffee table. So, I picked up. "Sweetheart, listen, just tell the police you were aware," she said right away. "Not a word about concern or checking if I was all right. No, this isn't what it looks like, or please don't be upset. Just a straightforward, tell them you knew." I blinked in disbelief. "What? That you gave everyone permission to use the house?" She explained it was merely a small gathering, like back in the old days. Old days. She mentioned community events with trusted people, insisted it wasn't dangerous, and begged me to confirm it was fine. I stood up and moved over to the window of my hotel room. Outside, I could see the parking lot, a minivan parked awkwardly across two spaces, and a woman struggling with her toddler's scarf. Everything appeared ordinary. So painfully ordinary. I asked my mom, "What exactly were you doing in my house?" There was no response. I pressed on, telling her I had seen the people, the items on my rug, table, and sofa. What on earth was that? She said they could explain, but not right now. I said no, this was unacceptable. "What exactly were you doing? It wasn't against the law. We didn't cause harm to anyone. Everything was private. Still, someone overreacted and called the police because they noticed a camera. Yes, a camera I had set up in my own home because you were using it without telling me." Another silence followed. Then my father's quiet voice spoke. "We did not think you would understand, so you decided not to give me a chance. We believed you would try to stop it." He was right. I ended the call before they could say more. I didn't slam the phone or throw it. I simply placed it gently on the edge of the table and stared at it as if it was someone else's problem. 3 days later, I received a message request on Facebook from someone I hadn't spoken to for at least 10 years. One of my parents' old friends with gray hair, a poetry blog, and probably still drinks chamomile tea as if it's a part of their identity. The message was calm, apologetic, and almost overly kind. "I didn't realize they didn't have your permission. We were told you knew about it and were comfortable. I'm so sorry. If it helps, here's the website they use to organize everything." There was a link. During my work trips, each destination was mentioned vaguely, yet I recognized the images shown. One displayed a wine glass resting on a table that I had personally refinished while in lockdown. Another showed the carpet my mother always claimed was too simple. They had not borrowed my home, instead they had showcased it. There was a host name, and the associated email address contained my mother's old nickname from her hippie years, merely spelled backward. I shut the laptop, not out of anger or fear, but with a sense of finality. They appeared 4 days later without any message or warning, just a knock on the door accompanied by the slow, tired sounds of two people pretending calm. "There was no need to make a bigger deal out of this," my mother said as soon as I opened the door. "We could have resolved this as a family." I assured her I hadn't stirred anything. "One of your guests called the police," I explained. "I wasn't even aware of it, but you told them everything." "I told the truth," she said. "We were trying to support your sister. She needed help." "You refused," I pointed out. "She needed a larger house," she replied. "I believed that didn't give her the right to claim mine." "We couldn't use ours," my father added, "because people here know us." "Yours was neutral," I emphasized. "Neutral?" I questioned. "That is what I am now." "You were away most of the time. The house remained unused." "It was not empty," I insisted. "It was mine." They did not respond, leaving with the same silence they had brought. The consequences were not loud, but far worse: violations of licensing rules, zoning complaints, and more. A cease and desist order arrived from the city, followed by a letter from the IRS questioning undeclared income. One of the visitors took legal action against them for emotional harm and invasion of privacy. They did not land in prison, but suffered financial and social consequences quietly. Their website was taken down, the network went dark, and all the friends they used to meet with stopped answering their calls. My sister called next and said, "I hope you are satisfied." Excuse me, they had been trying to assist me, yet now Emily and Dan have to relocate. They can no longer help with the mortgage, so you are putting the blame on me. You did not have to go to such extremes. You could have protected them. They used my home without permission. They claimed they did it for my sake. No, they acted without asking me. They did not get your approval either, did they? That was where it ended. I sold the house quietly, did not advertise it or share the news, hired a real estate agent, packed up all the proof, and signed the papers. The new place is smaller, calmer, and farther away. It smells of fresh paint and freedom from other people's choices. I did not leave a key under the doormat. I did not give anyone a duplicate. They tried calling once or twice, but there were no voicemails, only ignored calls I let go unanswered. Eventually, they gave up. There was no dramatic conclusion, no last attempt at an apology, just an unspoken understanding between people who know when a chapter has closed and do not feel the need to say it aloud. We did not fall out. We simply ceased pretending to orbit each other. They expected I would defend them. I did not. I believed they would keep me safe, but in the end, it turned out we were both mistaken. That is the whole story. Some people thought I exaggerated the situation, while others felt I was too lenient with them. What is your opinion? Did I cross a line, or was my response justified? Share your thoughts in the comments below.